So basically this is the next part of the restoration. A lot of things have happened since I spoke to you last time. Some good, some bad. So the original schematic of the thing was this, and I tried to work out what the hell was going on. And over the period of time of working on the car, I've sort of simplified it into this. So this explains, I think, a bit better on what's actually happening. So the hydraulic oil in your oil tank comes into a boost pump. So there's two hydraulic pumps in the car, one there, one there. This one puts out 50 to 70 psi, and that goes into the main pump, which boosts the pressure up to 1,000 psi or somewhere around that. It's got a valve that at 1,500 psi it bypasses it, so it doesn't get over that. The boost pump, the lower pressure, also drives this, what they call the variable ratio unit, which is the electric. So when you press your accelerator pedal, there's electronics that operates these two valves. One lets oil into this cylinder, one lets oil out. So this is the electric to hydraulic conversion. So as you press the accelerator, this cylinder here pushes a rod into this master cylinder. So this is all hydraulic oil in green. This is all brake fluid. So you've got a master cylinder which was made one-off by Flinders Uni, and 3 slave cylinders which come off of something, Austin 1800 or something similar. The internals of this one, the cylinder size on these are smaller than this. This one's got a much larger cylinder size. So when this operates, the pressure in here operates this one first and operates the main pump. Now the pump is a 5-cylinder hydraulic pump, which the cylinders rotate, or the piston and cylinder rotates, and there's a swash plate which in the off position is horizontal, so they just spin around, don't do anything. When the accelerator is pressed, the master cylinder operates, puts pressure on that. This pushes a rod in here which tilts the swash plate. So as the piston cylinders rotate, they go up and down, and the pistons actually work, producing an output of the pump here, which goes to the hydraulic motors, one on each wheel. These don't move at this point. So when that goes in, it only operates that. When this builds up pressure, it pushes back on this rod, increasing the total pressure here, and operates these at that point. So this is something we learnt by talking to Darryl Whitford, the designer, who's living up in Townsville. And if we hadn't known that, we'd have no idea of what we were doing, what we're up against. Because we're pressing that, and this was operating and these weren't. We thought, oh, something's wrong, you know, but that's exactly how it should work until that builds up pressure. At this stage, we've got pressure out of this pump, but this pump, the pressure out is the same as the pressure in, so there's some issue here. But that, I hope that gives you more of an idea of what it's like. The type of this high pressure stuff is all conventional hose, high pressure hose that you see on hydraulic systems. The low pressure stuff is all this. It's a thick-walled nylon pipe, and it's rated for hydraulic oil at 1,000 psi. So all of this green stuff is plumbed in this of different sizes. So that's the 2 motors. That's the one that produces the 70 psi, and that's the main pump that produces the high pressure. That's the main pump. That's the 5 cylinders. When we took the top off to try and work out what was going on, and that's the swash plate. That's the bit that tilts when this rod is pushed in. So the slave cylinder sits on this end and pushes this rod in and operates that. So this was originally really rusty, anything we pull off to fix or work out how the hell works, a mate and I that's helping me, Ray, we clean it up and paint it, and so it's all restored. That's the variable ratio unit, the one that converts the electrical signal to the hydraulic. So that's the cylinder. There's two valves there that let the oil in and out. It presses the rod up through there, and the master cylinder is on this end here. That was before I fixed it. So the pump, at this point we found that once we started putting pressure on everything, all of these were leaking right through the whole car, because the plastic is just over 50 years of sitting there. So basically I'm in the process of replacing all of the low pressure plastic pipe. I can still use the original outside fittings and just put new ferrules on, and it works really well. The other thing that was happening was that the cylinder inside here, that was also leaking. The seal was gone on that. There's a piston with a rubber seal, and then there's another aluminium piece that holds the seal onto the piston. I couldn't get the original seal. This is the new one. The original one had a much smaller diameter. So what I did was make a new piece of larger diameter that holds the seal onto the original piston. And then what I've done is kept all the original bits in a box. So if anyone wants to absolutely restore it back and get a seal made or something, that can be done. And I'm documenting everything. So I just made another piece, and that works well. And there was also some minute score marks in there. So I found the best way of, I spoke to Viv Rush, who's given the talk here before, and I just used 1200 wet and dry in the lathe, set it up on the tool post so I could set it up exactly parallel and just bring it in with water in there, and it didn't take much at all to get rid of the slight scoring that was on it. So we have tested it, and nothing leaks. But we had a bit of a setback. At this point it was sitting on my bench and there were bits of pipe hanging out, and I was doing another job, welding, and I set fire to some rags, which then set fire to bits hanging out the box. So it's, all my new pipe and stuff. Luckily these were a lot longer than they needed to be, so I could actually just cut them off and put them back in their original positions. And that's it, put back together again. That's the master cylinder, which hangs out the end of that box. So once again we replaced, and what I've done, they make this stuff in black and clear, and whatever was clear on the car we've replaced with clear, and whatever's black on the car we've replaced with black. So if you look at it, it looks exactly the same. So rather than using the variable ratio unit and having to have the motor running to operate the master cylinder, I just made this up that manually we could actually do it and then pump it and bleed the whole system, because this is all the brake fluid driven stuff. The three slave cylinders, they were all knackered, but absolutely rusted and buggered, so I had them $400 later, they re-sleeved. So that's reinstalled and they still didn't work. And then I found out that these hoses were totally blocked. I couldn't even get a piece of wire up it, so I don't know what's inside it. So I took it to my local Auto Pro in Harndorf, and I walked in and I thought this is going to be good. I walked in and the guy said, "Oh, mini front brake hoses." Thank you. That's what they were. So, so that's the new slave cylinder on there, and that's the unit that operates the pump. That was before we pulled it apart and cleaned it and polished it up. So these slave cylinders operate, they've got this lever which pushes back. This is the motor, the control on the motor, and where this operates at is set by these two. This one sets a position, this one locks it, those nuts. So it uses C-spanner on the nuts. So they're set so that when the master cylinder is operated fully, these don't move. So they're set to the point where the master cylinder, the slave cylinder on the motor is fully operated, and these are just about to operate. So we adjusted that so they both operate at the same time. So this also sets, if one motor is driving more than the other, so your car starts driving to the left or right, you can adjust this point so they're operating at the same position. But once again, we found all this out from Daryl, the designer. So all the pipes, these are the feed-in pipe from the tank, goes straight into the motor, and then the return line comes back in through there. This had shrunk to the point where it wasn't actually joining the motor at all. It was just hanging in mid-air. So I've replaced them with the same type. And then we found there was oil pissing out the front of the car. So we investigated that, and there's an oil cooler in the front. So the pipes come right through to the front of the vehicle. Once again, same plastic pipe, same leaking around the joints. So I pulled all that apart. This is the fan that cools it. So I've redone the fan. That's all, some of the ferrules. There's another 10 that I'd already put on when I took that photo to go on the new pipe. So while I was waiting for some stuff to come in to do the pipe work, I thought I'll have a go at the contactor box, which is the main contactor for the motor. That sits down alongside the driver's seat, so it's out in the open, and obviously had water get into it. And I thought, oh, that is the worst part of the whole car. So right, we'll have a go at that. So I pulled it apart, and each of the contactors were pretty bad looking. But once I got them, I'd stripped the whole thing down and cleaned each part individually, and it came up amazingly good. There was no actual damage. So after a lot of wire brushing and a bit of painting, they ended up looking like that. So they all cleaned up. There's 2 contactors. That's for the soft start on the motor. When the accelerator's pressed, one comes in, and the motor, there's resistors that limit the current on the motor. When there's voltage on that also operates the second one, which basically just bypasses that, goes straight across to put the full 150 volts on the motor. This diode is for regeneration. So when the motor's on overrun, the positive and negative are reversed coming out of the motor, and so that diode actually feeds it back into the battery. Daryl was saying that it works to almost stop, car stops. I also had a bit of a look at the dashboard while I was waiting for stuff, so I pulled that out. This part actually, there's 4 screws, and there's a little frame comes out, then the whole thing comes out. You have to get the steering wheel off first, which was another episode, but we got there. But it never had a key for the ignition, so that was obviously going to be problematic as we got further along. So I pulled it out to have a look what was actually there, and it was just pretty much covered in crap. Inside the box looked great. There was nothing wrong with it. That there is the electronics for the speedo and odometer that they made, and this is for they're all analog gauges for current and speedo and stuff, and that's all the adjustments for that. It's just close up on the board. It was after a bit of a clean up. I hadn't finished yet, but it was already looking better. And the key, the switch, it actually switches 150 volts, the full battery voltage. So it's not an automotive type switch. Oops, what have I done? That's not good. Yeah, I had a couple of switches that would actually fit in there. Keys that would fit in that lock. Because I thought, well, I can't just, probably not better go out and buy one these days, exactly the same. So with a bit of filing and a bit of working around, I actually got 2 keys to actually fit. So we now have an ignition switch that works with a key. And the keys are period correct because I've had them laying around in my box since the 70s. So yep, that's it. So there's 3 little videos. The first one is of the key working. So you've got 2 positions, on and auxiliary. So on allows the motor to go and auxiliary is just for obviously like a normal car, all the other stuff. The second one is after the adjustment of the slave cylinders on the motor. So that's the one that operates the pump. So you can see it's going to full travel, and the ones on the motors are not moving at all. So that's that. And the last one is our minor success of the motor actually after 50 years first turning the wheels. So we're just manually operating the master cylinder. So we have achieved that. The downside is that that's as fast as they'll go because they're just running on the 70 psi out the first pump going through the second pump. So until we can get the second pump to produce pressure, that's the one stumbling block we've got at the moment. So if we're doing a bit of research on Tuesday, my friend and myself. He reckons he might know what's going on. So apparently they produce volume or pressure. So who knows? And once we've done that, it's the electrics and electronics, and that's easy, that shit. So hydraulics I've been having trouble with, but I've learned a lot and I know exactly where every pipe in that car goes now. So that's it.